And I thought my wife was planning a romantic New Year's surprise. Then I followed her to a hotel, discovered she was cheating with my boss, exposed everything in front of our friends at a second New Year party, and accidentally uncovered a second secret affair in the process. My name is Ethan Reyes. I'm 35 years old, and I guess the most accurate title for this story is How I Found Out My Wife Was Cheating on Me Over New Year's and Accidentally Turned Our Friend Group into a live-action soap opera. It all really takes place during that weird bubble of time called the holidays, when people say things like, "Let's circle back in January," and pretend calories don't count, and it reaches maximum chaos on New Year's Eve, right around the moment the countdown hits one, and everyone yells, "Happy things they don't mean." I should say up front that when this started, I was not a particularly dramatic person. I was a perfectly normal, mildly stressed high school math teacher who thought the wildest thing that could happen to me on New Year's was running out of mini quiches at our apartment party. I was married to Lily. She's a graphic designer with a smile that made people immediately trust her with their brand identity and their deepest trauma. We'd been together 8 years, married for 6, and our tradition was always the same. Host a New Year's Eve party, complain about how tired we are by 10:30, then somehow still be awake at 2 a.m., eating cold spinach dip out of the container. Somewhere between last New Year's and this one, though, our marriage slid sideways, and I didn't notice at first because I was busy grading quizzes and trying to convince teenagers that fractions were not a personal attack. The first sign should have been the phone, specifically Lily's phone, which started living face down on tables like it was shy. She used to toss it around, screen up, notifications dinging like a slot machine. Suddenly it was on silent, flipped over, and always locked the moment I walked into a room. "New client?" she said, shrugging when I asked. "Big campaign, lots of late-night changes." That sounded reasonable. Design is deadline chaos. Plus, this was early December, and everyone was rushing to launch New Year, New You gym ads, so we could all feel bad about cheese. I wanted to believe her. I did. But then the late nights started. She'd come home at 11 or midnight, hair a little messy, smelling like citrus perfume and city air, saying things like, "We had to redo the whole pitch deck," and "You'd think people would know their brand tone of voice by now." I tried to be a supportive husband. I made tea. I reheated dinner. I ignored the way she'd jump if my hand brushed her phone. Meanwhile, we were planning our annual New Year's Eve party. This year, Lily had a theme. New Year, New Truths. Everyone had to come in something metallic and bring an anonymous confession written on a little card. At midnight, we'd read them out loud and guess who wrote which. "It'll be cathartic," she said, eyes bright. "Like emotional spring cleaning, but with glitter." I joked that our friends were already oversharers, so I wasn't sure how much more could come out. But she just grinned and said, "Oh, you'd be surprised what people keep to themselves. If this were a movie, that's when ominous music would swell. In real life, it was just the sound of the dishwasher and me opening another bag of chips." About a week before New Year's, I found the second sign completely by accident. I was looking for tape in the junk drawer because the wrapping paper situation under our tree looked like a raccoon had tried its best, and my hand bumped against a crumpled receipt. I pulled it out and frowned. Le Ciel Hotel, Champagne Experience for 2, January the 1st, 11 a.m., paid in full. I stared at it for a solid minute, my stomach doing a slow, weird twist. I had not booked a champagne experience for 2. I am more of a "do we still have that grocery store sparkling cider" kind of guy. My first thought was that Lily had surprised me, which was a sweet idea until I realized she is physically incapable of keeping surprises secret without some kind of dramatic build-up. The woman once almost burst into tears, trying not to tell me she'd bought me a new set of noise-canceling headphones. The receipt had her card's last 4 digits and her signature. I stood in the tiny kitchen holding that paper like it was a pop quiz I hadn't studied for. My brain immediately did that thing where it lined up every little oddity from the past 2 months. The phone, the late nights, the new lacy underwear I'd seen in the laundry that she never wore around me, the sudden gym membership she'd bought so we can get strong together in the new year. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe she'd invited my best friend Noah to join us for a fancy brunch because he'd been going through a breakup. Maybe the hotel had a buy one get one deal. Maybe monkeys would fly past our 15th floor window wearing sequined fedoras. I stuffed the receipt back in the drawer. I told myself firmly, talk to her like an adult. Then I did not do that. Instead, I fell back on the classic Reyes conflict management strategy. Pretend everything is fine, and build a detailed spreadsheet of possible disaster scenarios in my head. A couple of days later, on December 29th, I got home from school to find Lily at the dining table surrounded by glitter pens, confession cards, and an open laptop. "Hey," she said cheerfully, closing the laptop just a little too fast. "How do you feel about serving mini grilled cheeses on skewers instead of pigs in a blanket? It's a new year, we can fancy up the carbs." "Sure," I said automatically. Quick question. What are we doing New Year's Day?" She blinked, then tilted her head. "Why?" "Just wondered if I should plan on napping aggressively or if we have, brunch plans." I watched her face like I was playing emotional poker. She smiled. "Oh, right, yeah, brunch," she said. My heart did a small, very small leap of hope. I was thinking we could just do something low-key. Stay home. Leftovers. Pajamas. My heart did a bigger, less hopeful lurch. "No hotel thing?" I added, trying to sound casual and probably failing so hard my students would have given me a pity laugh. Her eyes flickered. "What hotel thing?" "Nothing," I said quickly, because apparently I am a coward. "Thought I heard something about a hotel promotion on the radio." "Never mind." She gave me a long look that said she knew I was being weird but didn't quite know why, then slid one of the confession cards across the table like it was a peace offering. "Here," she said. "Write something juicy. And you're not allowed to put 'I once graded exams during a concert' again. That was last year." For the record, that concert was very boring, and the proctoring table had good lighting. The next day, my colleague Maria cornered me in the staff lounge and provided the third sign, though she didn't know it. Maria's husband works in HR at the design agency where Lily works. We were fighting the ancient coffee machine together when she said, "Hey, my husband says your wife's company is wild this quarter. So many people changing their benefits and stuff. He was impressed that you two keep everything separate. That's unusual for married couples." I frowned at my cup. "Separate?" "Yeah. He said she switched her insurance coverage last month but still listed herself as single. No dependents, no spouse." "Maybe he got it wrong, though. Those forms all look the same to me." I laughed mechanically and said something like, "Yeah, forms, fun." But inside something icy slid into place. Single, no spouse. It could be an honest mistake. Maybe she had to tick a specific box for some tax reason. Maybe the form was glitchy. The excuses lined up like a chorus, but they were getting weaker. That night, Lily came home late again, hair windswept, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Sorry," she sighed, dropping her bag. "Client emergency. The new campaign needed a whole mood board redo." Did the mood board take place at Le Ciel Hotel? I wanted to ask. I did not ask. I heated up her dinner, watched her eat, listened to her talk about fonts. I went to bed with a knot in my stomach and my brain counting down to New Year's like it was a bomb instead of a party. Finally, the day arrived. December 31st. Our apartment looked like a disco ball had exploded in it. There were metallic streamers on the walls, fairy lights draped over every surface, and a big hand-lettered sign, courtesy of Lily, that said "New Year, New Truths" over the drinks table. I had spent the afternoon chopping, skewering, and arranging food in ways that made me consider a career in catering. Noah arrived first, as usual. He's my best friend since college, the kind of guy who can make conversation with a potted plant and somehow make the plant feel good about itself. He walked in carrying 2 bags of ice and a cheesecake, which is why we've stayed friends for so long. "Ethan, my dude," he said, bumping my shoulder. "Ready to ring in another cycle of pretending we're going to run a marathon?" "Absolutely," I said. "I've already pre-printed my 'I tried' gym selfie." He laughed, then lowered his voice a little. "Everything okay with you and Lily?" She seemed, I don't know, twitchy when she asked me to come over early to help set up. My radar pinged. When did she ask you that? A couple days ago? We bumped into each other downtown. She said she needed extra hands for the party. Why? No reason, I said, staring at him a little too hard. The idea flickered in my mind. What if the someone else wasn't some mystery client or a random guy from her office? What if it was Noah, who knew our Wi-Fi password, our fridge contents, and the exact way Lily liked her coffee? My heart gave an unpleasant thump. I shook it off. This was Noah. He once cried at a commercial where a lamp got thrown away. He could never. People arrived. Our friend group is a mix of teachers, designers, childhood neighbors, and one very serious accountant who always brings a vegetable tray as if it's a moral duty. The apartment filled with the smell of food and the sound of someone arguing about whether the best year of the decade had already happened. Everyone tossed their confession cards into a big silver bowl in the center of the coffee table. Lily flitted around, refilling drinks, laughing, making everyone feel like they were the main character. Every time she touched my arm or brushed past me, I felt this weird double sensation, the familiar warmth of my wife and the cold, hovering question mark of that hotel receipt. Around 11:30, I slipped away to our bedroom, allegedly to get more napkins, actually to stare at myself in the mirror and silently ask, "What are we doing?" That's when I saw it. On Lily's nightstand, there were 2 champagne flutes set neatly side by side. Not that weird. We owned glasses and a new year was approaching. But next to them, there was a small gift bag I'd never seen before. Not the gift I'd already found under the tree with my name on it, an admittedly great sweater, but a shiny black bag with silver tissue paper. Curiosity won. I peeked inside. Lacy, dark blue lingerie. Not in my size, obviously. There was a card tucked into the tissue. Can't wait for a fresh start. L. My stomach dropped to somewhere around my socks. A fresh start? My brain tried to be optimistic. Maybe she meant a fresh start for us. Maybe she was planning a post-party romantic surprise and had just signed her own initial because she assumed I'd know. Maybe she'd forgotten we sign cards with actual words like love or from, like normal people. Ethan? Lily's voice floated down the hallway, way too close. I shoved the bag back, probably not exactly where I found it, and grabbed the napkins. Like that had been my mission all along. In here, I called, trying for casual but landing on strangled. She stepped in, metallic dress shimmering, eyes bright. We're doing the countdown in 10. Everything okay? Yep, I said, gripping the napkins like they were a lifeline. Just emotionally preparing to miscount backwards from 10. She laughed, kissed me quickly, and I tried not to flinch. It was like hugging someone while standing on a trapdoor. We went back to the living room. The TV was showing the big New Year's broadcast with people packed into a freezing city somewhere, shouting and wearing ridiculous hats. Our friends clustered around, drinks in hand. Lily picked up the bowl of confessions dramatically. All right, truth tellers, she said. At midnight, we read these. No backing out. That's the rule. The digital clock on the TV ticked closer to midnight. Someone turned down the lights. We all did the countdown. 10, 9, 8, the usual yelling and clinking and hugging. When the clock hit 0, people kissed whoever they were closest to. Lily leaned in and kissed me. I kissed her back, and for a second I forgot about receipts and benefits forms and lacy blue things. For a second it was just us and glitter and the weirdly emotional feeling of starting a new year together. Then she pulled back and said, "Okay, time for the truth." Our friend Jenna took the first card from the bowl, put on her best dramatic voice, and read, "My resolution is to finally tell my parents I hate their dog." Everyone booed. "Monster!" someone yelled, laughing, and we immediately suspected the guy who always secretly flinches when dogs lick his hands. The next confession was about someone binge-watching a kid's cartoon for comfort. Another was from someone who'd accidentally eaten their roommate's labeled leftovers. Cute. Low stakes. Then Noah reached into the bowl and pulled out a card. His eyebrows rose as he read it silently. "Oh, wow," he said. "This one's okay." He cleared his throat. "I'm having an affair with my spouse's best friend, and we're going to tell them after New Year's." The room went silent so fast, it was like someone hit mute. Nobody laughed. Nobody said, "Good one." It was like a collective breath got sucked out of the apartment and forgot how to come back. My vision did a weird tunnel thing. Spouse's best friend. My best friend is Noah. I looked at him. He looked at me, then at Lily. Lily's face had gone a shade paler that was almost imperceptible unless you'd spent 8 years memorizing her expressions, the way some people memorize song lyrics. "Okay. Which one of you drama magnates wrote that?" Jenna finally said, half laughing, but it came out forced. "Seriously, that's a bit much." "Anonymous, remember?" Lily said. Her voice was steady, but her hand shook just enough that I noticed when she put her drink down. And I did what any rational adult would do in a moment like that. I smiled. Too widely. "Come on," I said, my voice sounding tinny in my own ears. "Statistically speaking, it has to be one of you." A few people laughed, the tension breaking just enough for the conversation to stumble forward like someone who'd had too many champagne refills. The bowl moved on, more confessions, more laughs, but it all felt distant, like I was watching through glass. Spouse's best friend. I tried to tell myself it could be anyone in the room. We had several married couples, and everyone here had at least one close friend. It wasn't necessarily me. It didn't have to be us. Except my brain unhelpfully replayed that card in Lily's room, "Can't wait for a fresh start," on a loop. And then zoomed in on Noah and Lily standing a little too close by the drinks table, laughing at something I couldn't hear. The party eventually fuzzed back into normal celebration mode, because humans are weirdly resilient when there are snacks. I laughed at jokes. I took a turn at karaoke because someone insisted on a New Year old songs sing-along. I even did the dishes. But under it all was this low hum of dread. Around 2 a.m., people started leaving, with the usual chorus of "We have to do brunch soon," and "Let's make this year count," which everyone knows translates to "See you in April." Noah helped me take out the trash. The night was cold and clear, city fireworks still popping in the distance. "Dude," he said, shivering as we walked down the hallway. "That affair confession? Wild, right?" I studied his face. "Yeah," I said. "Wild. You think it was anyone we know?" he added. There was something in his voice. Curiosity, sure, but also something like nervousness. "Statistically," I said again, defaulting to math because feelings were too tricky. "Probably." We stepped into the stairwell. I held the trash bag, he held the door. I almost blurted out, "Are you sleeping with my wife?" But the words stuck in my throat like a too big bite of bread. Instead, I said, "Hey, thanks for helping Lily with party setup." "Of course," he said. "She was stressed. You know how she gets when she's juggling work and hosting." "Yeah," I said. "I know." When we got back to the apartment, most people were gone. Only Jenna was left, asleep on the couch with a party hat over her face. Lily was stacking plates in the kitchen. "Good party," I said. "Yeah," she replied, rinsing something in the sink. "Everyone seemed to have fun." "That one confession was something," I tried, leaning against the counter. She paused for half a second. "Which? You know which?" I watched her shoulders tighten, then relax. She turned, wiped her hands on a towel, and met my eyes. "People joke about things," she said. "It's anonymous. You can't take it seriously." It was a perfectly reasonable sentence. It just didn't sit right. That night, I barely slept. I lay next to Lily, listening to her even breathing, staring at the ceiling and counting every regret I'd ever had about not installing hidden microphones. On New Year's morning, she got up early. I'm running out to get coffee and bagels, she said, already dressed in jeans and that blue sweater I liked. You want anything specific? I squinted at the clock. It was 9:30. Just a plain bagel, I mumbled. Wait, I can go with you. No, no. She kissed my forehead. Stay, sleep. You look like you wrestled with math demons all night. As soon as the door closed, my eyes snapped wide open. This was it. Either she was really going for bagels or for a champagne experience for two. I stared at the ceiling for exactly 30 seconds, then made a decision fueled by 2 parts anxiety and 1 part curiosity. I grabbed my phone, pulled on clothes, and opened the Find My app. We have our phones linked for safety, she'd said when we set it up. I was suddenly very grateful for past safety-focused Lily. A little dot marked Lily's iPhone was indeed moving away from our apartment. The app took a second, then updated. Le Ciel Hotel. Of course. I stared at the screen. My heartbeat sounded like someone drumming on a plastic table. All right, I told myself. You have 2 choices. You either stay here, eat imaginary bagels, and spend the rest of your life wondering, or you go find out. 10 minutes later, I was in our sensible sedan, driving downtown with my hands gripping the steering wheel like it might try to escape. The city on New Year's Day was quieter than usual, the streets full of confetti remnants and people walking dogs in pajamas. I parked near Le Ciel and sat there for a moment, staring at the revolving glass door. The hotel was one of those fancy boutique places with a lobby that looked like an art museum and probably charged you extra for blinking. I walked in and tried to look like a man who absolutely belonged there in his slightly wrinkled hoodie. The lobby smelled like vanilla and expensive decisions. I bought a coffee I didn't want, just so I had something to hold, then sat in a corner where I could see the elevator bank and the restaurant entrance. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure the concierge could hear it. At 10:55, I saw her. Lily stepped out of the elevator, hair done, eyeliner neat, sweater perfectly draped. She wasn't carrying any bagels. A tall figure appeared from behind a column and walked toward her. For one horrifying second, I thought it was Noah and felt my stomach plummet. But it wasn't. It was Greg, my boss, my department chair, the man who once gave a 30-minute speech on the beauty of calculus at a staff meeting. I blinked so hard my contact lens almost folded. Greg? They greeted each other with a hug that lasted just a touch too long to be strictly professional. Then they disappeared into the restaurant together. I stared. My brain, already a mess, went completely off script. Greg? Married for 20 years? Khaki pants Greg? The man who organized the teacher's board game night last month and got genuinely excited about Settlers of Catan? I felt a flush of anger, humiliation, and something else, an absurd sense of professional betrayal. It's one thing to have your wife cheat on you. It's another thing entirely when your boss is involved. Before I could decide whether to storm into the restaurant like an underprepared extra in a drama or flee the building screaming, I heard a voice behind me. Ethan? I turned. There, holding a plate with 2 croissants and looking equally stunned, was Mrs. Gregg. Well, technically her name is Dana, but in my head she is always Mrs. Gregg because she brings brownies to staff potlucks and asks about everyone's pets. Oh, I said, voice squeaking. Hi, Dana. I didn't, expect to see you. She raised an eyebrow. Same. I thought you two were having a quiet New Year's at home. My brain stuttered. We are, I tried. I mean, later. I came here to evaluate their lobby plants for a math project with shapes, geometry, you know. Dana slowly set her plate on the table and sat down across from me. Ethan, she said, in that tone adults use when they know a teenager has done something ridiculous, but also know yelling won't help. I'm not a geometry problem. Try again. I closed my eyes for a second and did something I wasn't expecting to do that morning. I told the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I admitted I'd found the hotel receipt, that I'd been suspicious, that Lily had said she was just getting bagels, and here I was. Dana listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from confusion to something like resigned sadness. "Well," she said finally, sighing, "at least I'm not alone in my detective work." "What do you mean?" I asked. She nodded toward the restaurant entrance. "Greg told me he was coming in early to meet a student about a scholarship. Our kids are at my sister's. I came down to surprise him with breakfast." There was a beat of silence as our mutual realization dawned. "So," I said slowly, "we're both here to surprise people who might be surprising us." "Looks like it," she said. "On the bright side, you do have excellent taste in suspicious venues." It was the first time I laughed in what felt like years. It came out a little hysterical, but it helped. "What do we do?" I asked. "Do we go in there? Confront them?" She shook her head. "Not yet. We don't know exactly what's going on. We can jump to conclusions or we can gather information." The way she said "gather information" made her sound less like a betrayed spouse and more like a very calm spy. "Also," she added, "neither of us has had a proper breakfast, and I refuse to confront anyone on an empty stomach." She flagged down a server, ordered coffee and something with eggs, and insisted I eat half her croissant while we waited. In the next 45 minutes, we sat there like two undercover agents in plain sight. At one point, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. "Long line at the bakery. Be back soon. Love you." I showed it to Dana. She rolled her eyes so hard I was briefly worried for her eyesight. "At least she added 'love you,'" she said dryly. "Greg just sends me photos of muffins with no context." Finally, the restaurant door opened. Lily and Greg emerged, laughing at something. He had his hand on the small of her back. They walked right past us without seeing, headed toward the elevators. Dana's jaw clenched. "Hand on the back," she murmured. "Classic." "Maybe he's just making sure she doesn't slip," I heard myself say, because apparently denial had one last stand in it. Dana shot me a look. "Sweetie," she said, "I've been married to that man for 2 decades. That's his 'we think we're subtle' hand." Something inside me cracked. Not all at once, but like ice on a lake starting to split. "So that's it?" I whispered. "They're really—" I couldn't finish. She took a breath, straightened her shoulders. "It certainly looks like something inappropriate," she said. "But you know what? We don't have to blow up the lobby right now. We can be smart about this." "Smart," I repeated weakly. She smiled grimly. "You're a math teacher. I'm a nurse. We are literally trained in careful documentation. We gather evidence, we take care of ourselves, and then we decide how to respond. Revenge," she added, stirring her coffee with unnecessary intensity, "is best served with a paper trail." The word revenge made me flinch. I'd never really thought of myself as a revenge person. I'm more of a make a snarky comment in my head, and then go home and alphabetize the spice rack person. But as I sat there, watching the elevator doors close behind my wife and my boss, something inside me shifted. I might not be a natural at revenge, but I am very, very good at planning. Over the next week, the strange, floaty first week of January, when everyone pretends to be productive while still writing the previous year on every form, I became an undercover version of myself. At home, I was polite, even affectionate, but also quietly observant. At school, I taught quadratic equations while mentally calculating how many ways you could split assets in a divorce. Dana and I exchanged occasional texts. "Nothing suspicious tonight," she'd write. "He actually watched a documentary with me. The guilt is getting to him." We agreed to keep things quiet for the moment, to avoid giving them any sign that we knew. In the middle of all this mess, an odd thing happened. Life went on. My students still complained about homework. The neighbor's dog still barked at 3 a.m. The world did not pause to let my personal drama catch up. That, somehow, made me both furious and weirdly determined. If the universe wasn't going to rearrange itself for my heartbreak, then I would have to do the rearranging myself. One night, a few days after the hotel stakeout, I walked into our living room to find Lily sitting cross-legged on the floor, sorting through old photo albums. "Look," she said, holding up a picture of us at our first New Year's together. We were in our 20s, at a terrible club, both wearing novelty glasses that said 2014. My tie was crooked, her lipstick was smudged, and we looked obnoxiously happy. "We were babies," she said, smiling. "Remember how the ceiling leaked and you were convinced the glitter was actually part of the building falling apart?" I took the photo from her. My chest hurt. "Yeah," I said. "You made me stay till they turned the lights on." "I wanted to kiss you under the disco ball," she replied, softer now. There was a stretch of silence. "We've changed," I said. It came out more blunt than I intended. She looked up. Something flickered in her face. Guilt? Sadness? "Everyone changes," she said. "It's a new year. People grow. They want different things." "What do you want?" I asked. It felt like the 1,000-pound question, lying between us like an elephant wearing a "Hello, I'm your problem" sticker. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then reached into one of the albums and pulled out a photo I didn't recognize. It wasn't from a holiday. It wasn't even of us. It showed Lily standing at a conference podium, giving a design talk, looking confident and bright. "I want possibilities," she said. "I want to feel like I'm not stuck being the same version of myself forever." I wanted to tell her that possibilities and fidelity were not mutually exclusive, that you could have a full, evolving life and still not sneak off to hotels with someone else. But part of me understood that ache she was describing. I'd been feeling wedged into my own predictable patterns for a while, too. The difference was that my midlife crisis consisted of buying a fancy graphing calculator and not committing emotional arson. "You can tell me if you're unhappy," I said quietly. "You don't have to look for possibilities somewhere else." Her eyes glistened for a second. Then she stood up abruptly, as if the conversation was a rug she'd almost tripped on. "You're tired," she said. "I'm tired. Let's not do heavy tonight." And just like that, the moment slipped away. She went to bed early. I stayed up staring at the old photos, feeling like I was flipping through a book where the last chapter had been quietly ripped out and replaced with someone else's handwriting. Dana, in the meantime, was not sitting still. She sent me a photo of credit card statements with certain charges highlighted. "He booked the hotel twice in the past month," she texted. "Same time of day, weekdays, when they're both in meetings." "I'm so sorry," I replied, because it seemed important to acknowledge that my own pain did not cancel out hers. "I'm making a file," she wrote. "If this goes to court, we'll be ready." A file. Evidence. That's when an idea started forming in my head. It wasn't fully formed yet, more like a math problem where you see the final answer but haven't worked out all the steps. But it involved 3 key components: public truth, private preparation, and just enough humor that I wouldn't completely lose my mind. Here's the thing about being betrayed. It makes you want to scream and throw things and stage dramatic exits. But I had spent my adult life learning to keep teenagers engaged in algebra. I am a professional at channeling chaos into structure, so I structured my revenge. First, I visited a lawyer. I told Lily I had a curriculum planning workshop. In reality, I sat in a calm, beige office while a woman named Ms. Park explained the basics of divorce law. We went over finances, assets, our lease, Do you want to pursue fault-based grounds? She asked. Infidelity can matter in some cases, depending on the state. Let's assume yes, I said, my voice shaking only slightly. But also let's assume I have the emotional resilience of a wet paper towel, so I'd like this to be as clean as possible. She smiled sympathetically. Then we prepare. We gather documentation, and when you're ready to file, you'll know exactly what to do. I left with a folder full of paperwork and a strange sense of calm. Step 1, check. Next, I called Le Ciel Hotel. Hi, I said, putting on my most pleasant voice. This is Ethan Reyes. I believe there may have been a billing mix-up. I'm seeing charges from your hotel on my spouse's card, and I just want to clarify the details so we can sort it out with the bank. The front desk manager, who sounded very perky and very eager to avoid a chargeback situation, as she put it, was happy to help. With a few leading questions, I got her to confirm the dates, times, room numbers, and even the email address they had on file for digital receipts. It was Lily's work email. If you could forward the folios to my email as well, I said gently. That would be really helpful. 20 minutes later, my inbox pinged. I opened the first PDF and stared at the words. Le Ciel Hotel, reservation for Lily Reyes and Gregory Nolan, champagne experience for 2. I didn't read the rest. I forwarded everything to Ms. Park. Step 2. Check. The last step was the hardest, because it involved timing, performance, and a certain amount of shamelessness. Luckily, I had a ready-made setup. Our friend group and their love for themed gatherings. A few days after that disastrous New Year's, I sent a group text. Hey team, since our New Year's Eve party ended with some intense anonymous confessions, looking at you, mystery person with the dog hating, I thought we could all use a New Year reset. Also, fun fact, some cultures celebrate New Year's on a different date. Let's honor that by having a second chance New Year on January 14th at our place. Come in comfy clothes. No anonymous bowl this time, I promise. Everyone responded enthusiastically, because if there's anything our social circle loves more than a theme, it's an excuse to wear sweatpants in public. Lily was surprised, but not opposed. You're really into this second New Year thing, she said, raising an eyebrow. I thought you hated vacuuming twice in 1 month. New Year, new chores, I said, forcing a smile. Besides, it'll be low-key, no confessions, just snacks and maybe a movie. Sounds nice, she said. We could use something low drama. I almost choked on my water. Over the next few days, I prepared. I backed up everything, emails, receipts, texts, to a secure folder. I talked to Dana again. Are you sure about making this public? She asked. Her hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, but her eyes were soft. Once this comes out, there's no putting it back. I know, I said. But I can't stand the idea of them looking our friends in the eye and pretending everything is fine. I'm not trying to create a spectacle just for fun. I'm tired of pretending I don't know what I know. She considered that. Fair enough, she said. Just promise me you're not going to throw anything heavy. I like you with a clean criminal record. The heaviest thing I plan to throw is information, I said, and maybe a mild pun. On January 14th, our apartment looked very different from New Year's Eve. No glitter, no fancy lights, just soft lamps, throw blankets, and a coffee table full of comfort food. Pizza, chips, something vaguely resembling vegetable sticks to appease the health-conscious. The TV was set up with my laptop connected, ready to go. A small Bluetooth speaker played low-key music in the background. You're oddly calm, Lily said as she arranged cups. Usually, before we have people over, you wander around muttering about coaster distribution. I made a spreadsheet in advance, I said, which was technically true, just not about coasters. Noah arrived with a tray of brownies. Redemption brownies, he said, for whoever wrote that dog confession. Come clean tonight and I'll give you an extra one. The others trickled in. Sitting among them felt surreal. These were people who knew us as Ethan and Lily, a couple unit, like a single entity that came with matching mugs. They didn't know that under the surface that hyphen was cracking. Once everyone had settled with plates and drinks, I cleared my throat. Hey, I said. Thanks for coming to our unofficial second new year. I know we said no confessions, but I actually do have something I want to share. The room quieted. Lily glanced at me, curious. Before I do, though, I added, I need you all to promise me something. Is this about the dog thing again? Jenna groaned. I already told you I was kidding. No, I said. This is content warning. Real. People shifted uneasily. I took a breath. My heart was beating fast, but underneath it was that now familiar thread of determination. On New Year's Eve, I began. One of the anonymous confessions said, I'm having an affair with my spouse's best friend, and we're going to tell them after New Year's. There was a ripple through the room. Noah stiffened. Lily's eyes widened just a fraction. At the time, I continued, we laughed it off. I mean, great party twist, right? Very dramatic. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I found this. I clicked the remote. The TV blinked, then displayed a scanned image of a receipt. Le Ciel Hotel, Champagne Experience for 2. A murmur ran through the group. I zoomed in on the names. Lily Reyes and Gregory Nolan. You could have heard a pin drop, or in this case, the sound of Noah dropping his brownie back onto the plate. Lily shot to her feet. What are you doing? She hissed. My hands were shaking, but I gripped the remote like a talisman. Telling the truth, I said, louder now. New year, new truths, right? That was your theme. I clicked again. The next slide showed a cropped screenshot of my email, the forwarded folio clearly listing multiple weekday reservations. I had blurred out irrelevant details, but the important parts were there. Date, time, names. I didn't want to believe it, I said. So I went to the hotel on New Year's Day. I told myself maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she was planning a surprise, but then I saw her there, with my boss. They told us they were in meetings. They were having brunch. My voice didn't crack. I was weirdly proud of that. The room was still. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth. The accountant clutched his vegetable stick like it might provide moral support. Noah muttered something that sounded like, "Oh, wow," under his breath. Lily's face had gone so pale I worried she might faint. Ethan, we should talk about this privately, she said. There was a tremor in her voice now. Please, turn it off. We will talk privately, I said. But not before I say this out loud. I know you've been seeing him behind my back. I know you lied about work meetings. I know our New Year's fresh start was going to be you leaving me in the dark while you moved on with someone else. Greg wasn't there, mercifully. He had declined the invite, citing family commitments, which I now knew translated to avoiding sitting in the same room as my betrayed spouse and my betrayed employee at the same time. Probably a wise decision for his stress levels, less so for his moral development. Lily's shoulders slumped. For a second I thought she might deny everything, spin an elaborate tale about collaborative hotel-based brainstorming. Instead, she covered her face with her hands. When she spoke, her voice was muffled. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she said. You mean you hoped I'd never find out? I asked. Or just not in 1080p resolution? Despite the heaviness of the moment, a few people huffed out shocked laughs. Humor, my default defense mechanism. Her hands dropped. Tears stood in her eyes, but there was also something like anger there, which threw me. You think you're the only one who's been unhappy? She snapped. You think I woke up one day and said, let me just ruin my life for fun? I think you made a choice, I replied, heart pounding. Several, actually. And then you made me hold the confetti while you did it. This is not really our business, the accountant said cautiously. Maybe we should… Wait, Noah cut in. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. I need to say something too. Great, I thought. Here it comes. My best friend's confession that he's been in on this mess from the start. That confession in the bowl? Noah said, looking around. The one about the affair with a spouse's best friend? That was mine. A buzzing sound filled my ears. I dimly registered Jenna whispering, "Oh my," like an elderly aunt in a drama. You? I repeated, stunned. Wait, what? Noah nodded, cheeks reddening. It was mine, but it wasn't about you two, I swear. I've been seeing Mark. Mark, in this case, being Jenna's husband. All heads swiveled to Mark, who made a strangled noise and nearly dropped his soda. Noah, Mark said. Seriously? You told me to be honest in the new year, Noah blurted, and I panicked and put it in the bowl instead. My brain tried to process this new layer of chaos while still juggling my own heartbreak. Somewhere in a cosmic writing room, someone was clearly having a lot of fun with our lives. So that confession wasn't about Lily, I said slowly. But the hotel and my boss definitely are? Yes, Lily said quietly. I'm not going to insult you by lying about that. Well, Jenna said faintly, this is the most eventful second New Year I've ever had. Same, muttered Mark, burying his face in his hands. I took a breath. Look, I said. I didn't bring all this up to turn our living room into a reality show. I brought it up because I'm done pretending. I know about the affair. I've seen the proof. And I need you all to understand something. This is not about you choosing sides or unfollowing anyone on social media. This is about me finally acknowledging that my life exploded at midnight, and I'm not just going to sweep the glitter under the couch. I turned to Lily. I've talked to a lawyer, I said. I'm filing for divorce. A collective gasp went around the room. Lily flinched like I'd slapped her. You already talked to a lawyer? She asked, voice breaking. You've been planning this behind my back? The irony of that nearly made me laugh. Yes, I said, because apparently that's how we do things now. For a moment, anger flashed across her face. Then it crumpled. She sank back onto the couch, tears finally spilling over. I didn't mean to fall for him, she said. He made me feel like I was interesting again, like I had potential. You are interesting, I said, feeling a sad, tired kind of frustration. You have potential. Your work is brilliant. None of that required sneaking around. You could have told me you were unhappy. We could have gone to counseling, or separated, or done literally anything that didn't involve loyalty points. A tiny, inappropriate part of my brain wondered if they at least got a good view. She wiped her eyes. I was a coward, she whispered. I didn't want to be the villain. You don't get to choose whether you're the villain in someone else's story, I replied, more gently than I expected. You just choose what you do. The rest follows. For a while, nobody spoke. The TV screen glowed with the damning evidence. Finally, Noah cleared his throat. So, he said weakly, does this mean no one wants brownies? It was such a ridiculous question that it cracked something open. Jenna started laughing, the kind of laugh that immediately becomes crying. Mark joined her from his face-in-hands position. Someone else started sniffling. I found myself laughing too, briefly, because the absurdity of it all needed an outlet. I'm sorry I brought everyone into this, I said when I could breathe again. You didn't sign up for the Ethan and Lily implosion show. We're your friends, Jenna said, wiping her eyes. We signed up for whatever shows up with pizza. It was strangely comforting. After everyone left, slowly, in a series of awkward hugs, reassurances, and a lot of, text me if you need anything, the apartment was quiet again. Lily and I stood in the living room, surrounded by dirty plates and emotional debris. "You really talked to a lawyer?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said. "I've already started the process. You'll get the papers this week." She nodded, staring at the floor. I don't know what to say. "You could start with, 'I'm sorry,'" I ventured. She looked up. Her eyes were swollen, but there was a strange clarity in them. "I'm sorry," she said, "for all of it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not sure I deserve it. I lost myself somewhere and tried to find a new version in the worst way possible." "You're not the only one who lost something," I said. "But here's the thing. I'm going to find a new version of myself too. One that doesn't include being someone's backup option." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." We divided the tasks of cleaning up like we'd always done, but this time there was an invisible line between us. Later, in bed, we lay on opposite sides, the space between us vast. "What's going to happen?" she asked in the dark. "We're going to separate," I said. "We're going to sign some very boring papers with very big consequences. We're going to tell our families. I'm going to find a new place. You might too. You and Greg are going to have to explain to your kids at school why their math teacher and their design hero are suddenly not invited to the same barbecues." "That's not funny," she muttered. "A little bit," I said, in a tragic, sitcom kind of way. She huffed out something that might have been a reluctant laugh. "What if I don't want to be with him long term?" she asked. "What if I just messed up and now I've burned every bridge?" "Then you'll have to build new ones," I said. "Preferably not in hotels I happen to attend." She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "Do you still love me?" The question hung there. In my mind, I saw our first New Year's kiss, the night we moved into this apartment, the way she used to fall asleep with marker on her fingers from late-night sketching. I also saw PDFs of hotel receipts and the way she'd said "we" when planning deception. "Yes," I said, "but that's not enough." There it was, a truth I hadn't fully admitted to myself until that moment. Love is necessary, but not sufficient. Like how owning a textbook doesn't mean you understand calculus. Over the next few months, things unfolded the way they do in stories, except slower and with more waiting rooms. There were meetings and signatures and awkward conversations. Greg was placed on administrative leave after Dana, armed with her meticulous file, had a chat with the district. At school, rumors fluttered like paper airplanes, some of them landing in my classroom. I didn't feed them. I just kept teaching integers, because kids still needed grades even when adults were acting messy. Lily moved out before I did, partly because her new freelance work hours were easier to shift, and partly because she didn't want to be the one in the apartment full of memories and a very judgmental houseplant. We split our belongings. I took the couch, the bookshelf, and the espresso machine we'd saved up for. She took the bedroom set, the nice plates, and the giant framed print of an abstract shape that had always looked like a surprised potato to me. One evening, as I carried a box of my stuff down the hallway, our neighbor, Mrs. Patel, poked her head out. She's in her 60s, lives with 2 cats and her niece, and has been feeding me samosas and unsolicited advice since we moved in. "Beta," she said, eyes soft behind her glasses. "I heard you're leaving." "Yeah," I said, shifting the box. "Turns out New Year's really does mean new everything." She clicked her tongue in sympathy. "People do foolish things," she said. "When they feel small, they sometimes try to feel big by making bad choices. But you?" She poked my shoulder. "You will be okay. You have a good head and a very detailed revenge PowerPoint." "It wasn't a PowerPoint," I protested. "More like a slideshow of accountability." She chuckled. "Call it what you like. It was effective. She needed to be confronted with the truth. So did he." That is not cruelty. That is clarity. I thought about that later, in my new one-bedroom apartment, sitting on the same old couch in a brand new living room. Was what I'd done revenge? Yes. I had chosen to reveal the affair in front of our friends, to make it impossible for them to hide behind vague excuses and we grew apart statements. I'd made sure my boss's misbehavior was documented, not just whispered. But it wasn't about hurting them just to hurt them. It was about reclaiming my story. New Year's had started with me thinking I was in one version of my life and discovering, quite abruptly, that another version had been running behind my back. My revenge was standing up in the center of that tangled mess and saying, "No, this is what actually happened. You don't get to rewrite it without me." A year later, yes, a full year, because healing and paperwork both take longer than you think. I stood on a different balcony, holding a mug of hot chocolate. It was New Year's Eve again. I was at Mrs. Patel's niece's party this time, a smaller gathering with board games and playlists that veered wildly from classic rock to bubblegum pop. Her niece, Mira, had invited me after we'd bonded in the laundry room over our mutual love of bad puns. She came out onto the balcony, wrapping her cardigan tighter against the cold. "You okay?" she asked, standing beside me. Fireworks bloomed in the distance, painting the sky with fleeting color. "Yeah," I said, just thinking about how different this new year feels from the last one. "Better or worse?" "Different," I said. "Better, I think. Less glitter, more honesty." She smiled. "Honesty suits you." Inside, someone started the countdown. 10, 9, 8. I thought about the boy I'd been in that old photo, grinning under a disco ball, and the man I'd been a year ago, standing in a lobby with a coffee and a breaking heart. I thought about the way I'd confronted the people who hurt me, not with screaming or destruction, but with receipts and calm explanations and one ill-timed joke about loyalty points. I thought about how revenge, for me, had not been about burning their world down, but about refusing to quietly let them burn mine. "Hey," Mira said, nudging my arm as the count hit 3. "New year, new truths?" I looked at her, at the unfolding year, at the version of myself who had learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step into the light with your worst day in a slideshow and say, "Here it is. New year, new everything," I said. When the countdown hit 0, I didn't make a resolution about running a marathon or learning a new language. I made a quieter one, just for me, to keep choosing people and a life that didn't require anonymous confessions in bowls or detective work in hotel lobbies. My spouse's infidelity had shattered the picture I thought I was living in. My revenge had been to hold that picture up in front of everyone, name every crack, and then walk away with my head up. That, I decided, would be my tradition from now on. Not glitter, not secrets, but this. The slightly terrifying freedom of starting a new year knowing exactly where I stand, even if it's somewhere completely unexpected.